Somewhere in your life, right now, there is someone who has never once said, "I'm sorry," and meant it. Not really. Maybe they said the words, maybe they even cried while saying them. But something always felt off, like watching an actor read lines from a script they didn't write and don't understand. If you've ever walked away from an apology feeling more confused and more guilty than before it happened, you weren't imagining things. You were witnessing one of the most studied, most misunderstood, and most dangerous patterns in human psychology. And by the end of this video, you're going to see it everywhere, in your family, in your relationships, in your job, and you will never be able to unsee it again. Here's the uncomfortable truth psychologists have known for decades, but rarely say out loud in plain language. Manipulators don't avoid apologizing because they forget, because they're too proud, or because they simply have bad communication skills. They avoid genuine apology because a real apology requires something their entire psychological structure is built to protect against. A real apology requires the temporary collapse of the self-image they have spent their whole life constructing. And that is a price most manipulators are simply unwilling, and in some cases psychologically unable, to pay. Let's break down what actually happens inside the mind of someone who cannot say sorry and mean it, because the mechanism is far stranger and far more calculated than most people assume. The first thing to understand is that a genuine apology requires three things happening at once. It requires acknowledging the harm without minimizing it. It requires feeling the discomfort of having caused that harm, and it requires no attempt to shift blame onto the person who was hurt. Most emotionally healthy people do this instinctively, even if it's uncomfortable, because their sense of self isn't threatened by being wrong. Being wrong is just a fact about a moment in time. It doesn't shatter who they are. For a manipulator, this is completely different. Many people who consistently manipulate others operate from what psychologists call a fragile, grandiose self-image. On the surface, this looks like confidence, charm, even superiority. But underneath, it is often held together by threads. Their sense of self isn't built on stable internal worth. It's built on control, being right, being admired, and never being caught in a position of weakness. When they are confronted with something they did wrong, especially in front of others, it doesn't register as "I made a mistake." It registers as a direct threat to the entire structure holding their identity together. And the brain does not treat identity threats gently. It treats them the same way it treats physical danger. This is where it gets genuinely fascinating from a neurological standpoint. Research into narcissistic and manipulative behavior patterns has repeatedly shown that when these individuals are confronted with criticism or wrongdoing, the brain's threat response activates almost instantly, the same fight-or-flight circuitry that lights up when someone feels physically cornered. So when you're standing there asking a manipulator to simply acknowledge that they hurt you, their nervous system isn't interpreting your request as reasonable. It's interpreting it as an attack. And people under perceived attack don't reflect. They defend. This is why you'll notice manipulators almost never apologize in the way you'd expect. Instead, they perform something psychologists call the non-apology apology. And once you learn to spot its structure, you will hear it in almost every manipulative person you've ever known. It sounds like, "I'm sorry you feel that way." It sounds like, "I'm sorry, but you have to admit you pushed me to it." It sounds like, "I already said sorry, why are you still upset?" Notice what all three of these have in common. None of them contain an actual admission of wrongdoing. All three quietly relocate the blame back onto you, the one who was hurt. This isn't accidental phrasing. It is a highly efficient psychological tool that lets them appear to take responsibility while their identity remains completely untouched. There's a second layer to this that almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most important part of the entire pattern. Manipulators often view apology itself as a loss of power, not as a moral action. To someone whose relationships are built on control rather than connection, admitting fault publicly hands the other person leverage. It says, "You were right, and I was wrong, and you get to feel justified." For most people, that's simply part of being human. For a manipulator, that transfer of moral high ground feels unbearable, almost unacceptable, because their entire relational strategy depends on always holding the upper hand. Genuine apology to them isn't kindness, it's surrender. And their nervous system has been trained, often since childhood, to treat surrender as danger. This actually connects to something researchers have found in early developmental patterns. A significant number of individuals who display chronic manipulative behavior in adulthood grew up in environments where vulnerability was punished rather than met with comfort. Maybe showing weakness got mocked. Maybe admitting fault as a child led to harsh punishment instead of understanding. Over time, the developing brain learns a brutal lesson. never let them see you as wrong, because being wrong is dangerous. That child grows into an adult who has built an entire emotional fortress around never occupying the position of the one who was wrong, even when it's obvious to literally everyone else in the room. Now, here's where this becomes deeply relevant to your own life, because recognizing this pattern isn't just an interesting psychological fact, it's a survival skill. If you've spent years waiting for someone to finally give you the apology you deserve, someone who consistently gaslights, blames, or minimizes instead of owning their behavior, you need to hear this clearly. You are not waiting for a rare moment of honesty to finally arrive. You are waiting for a psychological structure to voluntarily collapse. And that is not something you can request, earn, or negotiate your way into. Understanding this doesn't mean giving up on people. It means redirecting your energy away from chasing an apology that was never designed to come and toward protecting your own peace instead. There's also a quieter form of manipulation worth mentioning here because it's often mistaken for genuine remorse. Some manipulators have learned through years of practice exactly what an apology is supposed to sound like, and they can perform it flawlessly. The tears look real. The voice cracks in the right places. They'll even say all the correct words, "I take full responsibility, I know I hurt you." But watch what happens afterward. Does their behavior actually change, or does the same pattern repeat within weeks? A genuine apology reshapes future behavior. A performed apology simply resets the emotional temperature so the same cycle can continue. This distinction, action versus performance, is the single most reliable way to separate real accountability from manipulation dressed up as remorse. So what do you actually do with all of this? The first step is simply naming the pattern when you see it, because manipulation loses a significant amount of its power the moment it's clearly identified rather than emotionally absorbed. The second is adjusting your expectations to match reality rather than hope. Stop measuring someone's love or respect for you by whether they can finally say the words you need to hear. Measure it by whether their actions change, because that is the only apology that has ever actually mattered. And the third, maybe the most important, is recognizing that your own ability to apologize sincerely, to feel discomfort without collapsing your identity, is actually a sign of psychological strength, not weakness. The people who can say, "I was wrong," and still feel whole afterward are operating from a healthier, more secure sense of self than the ones who can't. If this video helped you finally understand someone in your life, or maybe even a pattern in yourself you hadn't named before, that's exactly why this channel exists, to turn confusing human behavior into something you can actually see clearly. There's a lot more of this coming, patterns hiding in plain sight that most people never learn to recognize until it's too late. So if you want to keep building that kind of clarity, stay close, because the next one might explain someone you've been trying to understand for years.